everyone, it's me, Lizette, with Hotel Industry Talk. And oh my gosh, I am so excited for today's episode. Today's guest was ahead of the entire industry by 20 years, like, literally wrote the paper on wellness and hospitality before anyone was even talking about it. I'm so excited to introduce Emily Johnson. She's the founder of Elevate Wellness Collective as well as Elevate Hospitality Collective, 20 plus years in hospitality, and the woman helping hoteliers finally activate the wellness potential that's already sitting right inside their properties. This conversation goes deep. We're talking mental health, revenue, guest experience, and why wellness and hospitality is so much bigger than a spa. You're going to want to take notes. Are you ready? Let's jump in. And I'm so excited. I have Emily Johnson here. Hey, Emily.
Hey.
Oh, thank you for being here. She is the CEO and founder of Elevate Hospitality Collective, and we are going to talk all things wellness today. I'm really excited. So, before we get started, I want to jump into a round of authentic questions, Emily. So, we're just going to talk more about who you are so the audience can get to know you. So, the first one is pretty easy. Like, what do you typically do when you wake up in the morning?
Well, I'd love to say it's a cup of zen every morning, Lizette. But the reality is I have 2 young children. And so typically my morning starts with an alarm going off and a child jumping in my bed. And then as much as I want to be intentional, a lot of times I do check my phone, make sure there's nothing pressing.
Yeah.
And the first 45 minutes of my day are usually filled with getting those kids out the door.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think the busyness I like to be busy in the morning, but I will say I'm starting to journal or get back into journaling again. It is so hard to get into that habit of, like, setting that time to just not do anything. I'm like, "I need to do stuff."
I'm very inspired by the moms who can get up at 5:30 AM for their workout, their journaling, their zen. That is not me. Number 1, I am not a morning person, so I'm
Okay.
actually more of a
Yeah,
night person. I'm like an owl, right?
yeah.
But beyond that, it felt like if I woke up earlier, then the kids ended up hearing me and waking up earlier. So I've learned, like, we're just gonna start the day with craziness.
So what does bedtime look like for you? Like, right before you're going to bed, how are you unwinding?
I'm actually a lot more intentional at bedtime. So
Oh, okay.
bedtime is usually like the last half an hour of my day is
Yeah.
usually when I take that time to write down things from the day, anything gratitude, anything I want to remember from the day. I have one of those one thoughts a day books that I usually write something down.
I love that.
Um, I usually end up reading for a good 15 to 20 minutes. That's a great way for me to unwind and relax. So it's funny because I know a lot of great leaders who really optimize their mornings. For
Yeah.
me, that evening wind down ritual is so important.
I love that so much. I am a morning person. My fiance's a night owl, so we're
Yes.
opposites. I feel like same thing. He taps into his creativity normally like towards evenings, and I'm
Yes.
morning. So I get it. I see that side too, and I'm sometimes like, I wish I was a night owl.
Everyone has and that's exactly it, is like, I think when
Yeah.
we think even about wellness, it's like everyone is different. What works for
Yes.
one person doesn't work for another.
Right. So true. Now I know I recently joined your book club and you mentioned reading and I
Mhm.
love to read. So tell us more about like why you launched a book club and then who it's meant for because I'm really excited about it.
I'm so excited about it too. Like, I like to, it's funny. These days I lovingly refer to myself as a hospitality nerd, and I've always been a book nerd. I'm on the board of my library here in my local town in New Jersey.
Oh,
I've always been a library person, so I spend a lot of time reading fictions, and I spend a lot of time sort of going on mental journeys with fictions. But I
yeah,
thought a lot about there are some great leadership books, some
yeah,
that are hospitality focused, some that are just in general great thought pieces, but we
mhm,
can all learn in hospitality, whether it's about the service culture or about women in leadership. And I was like, it'd be so great to create a network. We live in a virtual world now. We can really connect virtually with other leaders globally
yeah,
by having this virtual platform. So I launched the Back of the House Book Club just recently, and I'm excited for the first meeting,
yeah,
really with the intention of bringing together leaders and with an influence on female leadership. And I'm so glad we are having men join the table as well, because I want them to also understand some of those things that us as women leaders are trying to overcome, and why we have to be a bit more flexible and intentional about the time that we spend. So I'm so excited that it's happening. We're starting with a hospitality focused book, but I'm certainly hoping that we'll also take other leadership books and other folks' ideas, and how can we sort of leverage that in our day to day as leaders in the space.
Yeah, and I love the connection piece because, like, to your point, we're virtual, and now with the evolution of AI, I feel like more people are becoming even more, I guess, introverted than they
Yes.
probably normally are.
Yeah.
And I always say I'm an introvert extrovert, but I do notice that I'm finding myself collaborating more with AI and LLMs versus a human, and I'm like, wait a minute, I crave the human. Naturally, as humans, we
Agreed.
crave that connection. So
I
thanks for
agree.
doing that. I'm really excited, and I look forward to learning from leaders like you and other entrepreneurs, especially being a new entrepreneur myself. I'm really excited to learn and get some tips. Now, you're a business owner. I would love to hear more about how you navigate and balance your day to day or your weeks, especially in our space. You know how fast paced it is.
Yes.
We're constantly moving. So, how do you find your balance?
Absolutely. So I feel like when I first launched this business, I was trying to do like 20 things a day. Like I even today, the truth is I have a list that's 20 things long. But the way
Yeah.
that I'm intentional about it is I choose 2 to 3 of those. I really choose 2 to 3 of those, and I tell myself like, okay, here's sort of the 2 to 3 non-negotiable. Beyond the non-negotiable, it's a cherry on top if I get to additional time within my time boundaries of getting
Yeah.
things done. Um, so for example, I had a day yesterday, I went into New York City, actually, I went in, there was a women in hospitality brunch, so shout out to NYCWOH, Women of Hospitality in New York City. So I knew that many of the priorities on my task list weren't going to be accomplished when I was also in the city and being intentional with my time and being with people. So
Mhm.
yesterday was a day where I really only had 1 or 2 things I said, "Okay, I'm gonna accomplish those things besides getting into the city and doing that." There's other days where I know, "Okay, I'm sitting in front of the computer today, I'm
Yeah.
having phone calls, and I'm gonna try to accomplish 1 or 2 other things." I think I had to realize very quickly in running my own business that not everything is gonna get done each day. I have to prioritize, and I do some time blocking to make sure that I'm strategic about how I'm spending my time.
Yeah, I love that. That is so good. I think time blocking for me is really important. If it's not on my calendar, it just doesn't exist or I
Yeah.
forget. And, but
Yes.
I love that you said your list, but your priority list. I recently, again, going back to chat, I asked it questions about, um, if it could design me a CO planner of what I should
Mhm.
be looking at in my day to day and how I should be prioritizing. And that's like the first thing it popped up is what are your 3 priority key things? What are your other things? But like also what intention are you trying to set? So I'm
Yes.
really, like, what do you wanna accomplish for the week? Maybe it's every day there's a list, but at the end of the week, what is that one thing that you expect to.
Correct.
Yeah, and
Correct. It's a little bit of, like, smart planning, right? Like, it's
yes,
a little bit of personal
yes!
smart planning or SMART
Love
goals, right?
it.
The
Yeah,
those measurable goals, and I think that's the way I look at it too, is I try to remember, even as I set those 2 or 3 things I want to accomplish each day, well, right, what is the goal for the month? What is the goal for the quarter? What is the goal for the year? Are these things getting me closer to that, or are they just sort of busy work?
yeah, no, I hear that so much. Now, let's shift the conversation. I want to hear more about, and I'm sure the audience wants to know, how did you get into hospitality? And then what inspired you to create your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about how did I get into hospitality? I go back to, so when I was 16 years old, I worked at a Starbucks in Staten Island, New York. And now everyone's like, oh yeah, Starbucks. I'm like, well, back then things were quite different. I'm a little older than I look. No, I'm kidding. There wasn't many Starbucks back then. So that was my first purvey into sort of the service industry. And I was on the cusp of heading into college. And I
Mhm.
kind of thought I was gonna go be a psych major or social work. I knew I loved working with people, but
Mhm.
because I had this experience at Starbucks, I thought, well, this is like fun. Like this is like working with people, getting to know them, but it wasn't like it wasn't so deep. It was giving them an experience, and it was Starbucks as a coffee house at the time was
Yeah.
more experiential, right? So I go to Penn State, and I was sort of double majored to start. I was double majoring in psych, and I saw hospitality and was like, "Okay, well, like, I'm gonna take this." Within 1 semester, I had made the full switch over to hospitality because it just spoke to me so much more, the people
Mhm.
business, the relationship business.
Right.
And I remember growing up, whenever we would travel, and it was mostly locally within the United States, but even like a Holiday Inn, like, I would
Yeah.
walk around and be like, "What do they have? Do they have a restaurant?" Like, and my
Yeah.
family would tease me, like, the first thing I would do on almost every vacation was walk around. So, it started to all just kinda come together when I went to Penn State. I took that first semester of hospitality and was like, "This is really where I feel like I belong."
Yeah, and did you ever think that you would, looking back, own your own company? Like, was that something you set out, like, for the
I
future with
think
it? Yeah.
I think I've always been entrepreneurial, like, I feel like even before it was becoming, like, this big thing, I've always had very strong thought processes and strategic thinking, which is ultimately even why I spent most of my hospitality career in strategic sales is that's the way I think. I sort of think outside the box. I like to
Mhm.
bring in creativity, and so when I was presented sort of with this opportunity and I started getting more and more people sort of asking me, and I thought, "Well, here's a chance for me to go out and branch out on my own and help many different people, many different companies." And that's really what led me to forming Elevate Hospitality.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Like, what is Elevate Hospitality in your words, and how would you describe it to someone, out there listening?
So Elevate Hospitality Collective, and I'll even add why it was collective, is this
Yeah.
was sort of started a little over a year ago. I've always been passionate about wellness in the hospitality space. Back at Penn State, I actually wrote a research paper on wellness trends. And this is, again, I'm aging myself, but it was about 20 years ago. And at the time, all that really existed in the space was like Miraval and Canyon Ranch. Miraval before Hyatt and Canyon Ranch. Like this was
Yeah.
there were I think there were other brands out there, but they were the 2 big players in the United States that was doing this. And so I did some research, thinking, well, as the brands were expanding, W was adding, things. There was the Weston workout. There were certain things that were coming about 20 years ago. And I said, I think this is going to be important in hospitality. Now, what's funny is my hypothesis was kind of proven wrong. Most people were like, "No, no, no, we just care about being as close as possible to whatever, leisure or corporate event that we're going to." So back then, I don't know that the world was quite ready for it,
Right.
but it's always remained sort of a passion for me, this idea that we can go, on a trip to a hotel and have a meaningful wellness experience. So I was watching over the last few years, again, we went through COVID. Now all of a sudden, our human connection was being challenged. We all started feeling like disconnected with one another. As we talked about with AI, like I see this connection piece missing, and there's so
Yeah.
many little pieces that are going on. So about a year ago, I found that a lot of people in my life were struggling with mental health, truly. I think there was a lot of people in my life kind of feeling disconnected and struggling in different ways with mental health. I've read The Anxious Generation. I see a lot of people in the generation behind me
Yeah.
struggling with this human connection and the way that wellness intersects. And I felt like there's gotta be a solution in hospitality that we can provide in this space. And it has
Right.
to go beyond the spa because so many great hotels have great spas, but they're not really doing much more in terms of this wellness piece. So when I had the opportunity to split on my own, I was like, well, I don't wanna just talk about how do we create a profitable spa. How do we create systems and infrastructure on properties that will help support the whole person, whether that's mental health, whether that's nervous system regulation, whether that's sensory? And the collective piece, if you go on my website, there's a little story. I worked with a friend of mine who is in the mental health space, and we worked
Mm.
with a psychiatrist. I think of myself as a collective because I want people to know up front, like, this isn't just Emily and her ideas.
Yeah.
I'm working with other people depending on what the project is and bringing in experts, whether again, that is if it's a mental health practitioner, I worked with an acupuncturist for a while,
Yeah.
bringing in other specialists to be able to kind of come up with ideas and strategies that can really drive growth and commercial revenue and commercial growth
Yeah.
for hotels and hotel companies. It's not just a game of one, it's not just a game of Emily, it's a collective experience.
Yeah, and I love that you went to school for it, like, you saw the trend, like, you wrote that research paper, you saw that it was gonna be a trend, and it's really incredible and fascinating to see the evolution of wellness because it's not like you said, it's not just the spa, it's beyond that. It's how can we
Yes.
connect with not just ourselves, with others, and then everything around us, you tapping into sensory, and I'm seeing that growth so much in the industry. I would love to hear more about how you partner with hotels to elevate their hotel. Is that through a groups program? So in my head, I'm putting like my groups meetings and events. Ha-
Yes.
like, what does that look like if a hotelier is like, okay, I want to tap into this? Like, where do you begin?
So there's been a few things that I feel like
Yeah.
I'm going through my own journey and discovery process. One of the things that I've seen, and there's a huge rise in this, and some hotels I think are capitalizing on it, some aren't, is the retreat space. So
Mhm.
that could be a corporate retreat, a corporate buyout, or it could be a niche, wellness retreat. There are wellness facilitators and wellness leaders out there who are traveling the globe and have a
Yeah.
massive following of people who come and travel the globe with them because they want that experience. I mentioned
Mhm.
yoga because that's a big recognizable one, but there are holistic healers, there are mental health practitioners who have, basically created their own businesses in the retreat space. And I do see some niche hotels really tapping into this. I see others who really don't understand what it is to partner with a facilitator to create programming that really helps drive revenue. Now, I think we're using the term activations a lot. Some hotels are starting to say, okay, maybe we can look at some of our slow seasons and shoulder seasons and bring in practitioners for activations. This is
Yeah.
something that I think is really smart and strategic because it's a win-win. It helps the hotel drive new demand that they never had before, and it helps the practitioner have a place to basically facilitate their programming. So I think this is a really interesting space. I think it's a very big growing space, the
Yeah.
retreat space. One of the things that I conceptualized when I first started this business was what I was calling the wellness ROI audit. And this was I would basically go in or either virtually or in person and look at what was already going on at the hotel. There was a property that I went to work with here in the Northeast,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, we could do so many great in nature programs, equine therapy. They had farms. You could, work with the herbs, work with the vegetables. But what I
Wow.
realized by going on property was they didn't have the staffing to support that. So,
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I feel like I came up with the wellness audit is it's very hard to prescribe something to a hotel or say, here's something you should add or implement without really understanding the full picture of what's currently going on. If they don't have the staffing to support that, or if they don't have the infrastructure to support it, if they don't have the rooms to support it,
Right.
then there's no necessity in putting in a program that just flat out isn't gonna work. So I've seen a lot of interesting programs out there, but I think there's a correct niche for
Yeah.
every property, and being prescriptive and saying, "Oh, you should try this or you could try that," doesn't always work.
Yeah, and then from, like, listening to you, what I hear and my takeaway is as a hotelier, if I had a hotel or as a hotel owner, it's when you're thinking about approaching you, you're already offering a service that you're gonna be able to audit. You're gonna be able to see what they have available, if it's even feasible, because to your
Right.
point, it may not be. But what I love there is that transparency of you recognizing, like, you don't have enough staff equipped for this, or it's going to take this amount of work for you to execute this program or deliver. Because the last thing they want is to book something, say they offer that, and then not deliver.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's it, is I think there are properties right now that have some fantastic programming, but
Mhm.
they're not able to deliver for X, Y, or Z reason, and
Yes.
that's why I think the audit is a fundamental. I've had a lot of folks reach out to me and say, "We wanna do activations," or, "What kind of programming ideas do you have?" And I have to almost back them up, like, "Wait, wait, wait. What's going on currently?"
Yeah.
Even in the development process, so I've now talked with a number of developers who are looking at how are we gonna add wellness programming to our upcoming hotel, or we have an idea for a retreat center, we have a idea for a boutique hotel, and part of it is, again, taking a step back. What's going on currently in the market? What's successful and what isn't? Does it make sense for you to do a full spa build out when there's 6 other spas in the same town?
Right.
Really being like, "Well, what's gonna differentiate you versus these other 6 luxury hotels that are in your town already?"
Yeah, and it's understanding, yeah, like you said, the market, the competitors, and doing a full analysis because to your point, I mean, if you're gonna set up this spend so much money on this
Yes.
spa and there's so many other spas out there, why not try something different? Now, when I'm thinking about, like, setting up different programming or initiatives, and being able to measure that impact and also be able to talk about it. Like, what advice would you give a hotelier who first wants to know, was this program successful? Like, how do you define that success for them? And then would you recommend that they do moving forward to promote this new wellness program if they implement it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my background really wasn't I worked for a mystery shopping company for 6
Yeah.
years, so I take a very quantitative
Yeah.
approach. So everything that I recommend implementing, there has to be a way to quantify its success. So when we talk about ROI, you can't
Mhm.
just say, "Oh, we had a, 2 times ROI." Like, I see a lot of that in the industry. I see a lot of, like, numbers getting thrown around. I
Mhm.
think you have to be very strategic about outlining, "This is what the program is going to do. This is how much it costs," or what makes sense and doesn't make sense. And then really quantifying, okay, in the next 30 days, what happens? 60 days, what happens? 90 days, what happens? And track that progress. But be very specific about the standards of it as well. Because I've seen the other side too, where someone's like, oh, this isn't working. And then you go back and say, well, but did you make sure the front desk handed out this pamphlet to each person? Oh, no, I don't know if they're doing that or not. I just visited a hotel yesterday in New York. I'm not gonna mention which. It was super impressive, but they do a number of things in the health and wellness space, and I asked a simple question. I said, "How do you communicate this to guests?"
Mm.
And pretty much the entire team looked at me. They gave me a look.
They're like, we don't. It's on
So
the
I'm like,
TV when you're browsing through the
I
programs.
don't even know that it is on the TV, right? I don't know, like so
You're
they've
right.
spent this money and they have this incredible property and the programming that, like, knocked my socks off, right? But,
Yes.
if I was a guest walking in that door and hadn't been with the on-site team, the GM, the director of sales, telling me on this sort of one-hour thorough tour I went on with them yesterday, I never would have known, right? I would
Yeah.
have checked in, I would have been grateful to be there, of course, but I don't think I would have known the level of details that they shared with me if I hadn't been me and been asking those questions because 'cause I'm interested in those things. So, I see that mistake a lot. I see a lot of places that actually already have things in place that they're not explaining to the guests or selling to the guests or communicating to the guests. And so it really then becomes this isn't about implementing new programming. This is actually about training your staff to properly explain what's
Yes.
going on.
Wow, so you wear many hats within your company. Not only are you, doing, like, your ROI, I'm sorry, not calculator, I'm thinking calculator in my head, like, your ROI analysis, but you're also offering a consultative approach to, "Okay, this is what you have in place," so and you're doing a tour, and I'm assuming the virtual tour is nearly the same. They're having you showcase their hotel, right? Um,
I so am again, because I have this mystery shopping background, it's always so much better for me to go in unannounced. Like, yesterday, I went in with the team, it's totally different. So, obviously, they're telling me, like, I'm with the team, they know who I am, it's totally
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Versus when I go in unannounced, and then I can come back and really give feedback on, "Well, here's what's really going on."
Oh, that's amazing. So you're also doing, like, mystery shopping and then saying, "Hey, listen, I did an analysis of your property, and this is where there's opportunity, where there's missed opportunity." On it when I think about wellness, I was reading recently so I'm part of the Florida, site, Florida Caribbean chapter, and I are you familiar with SITE, the Society for Incentive Travel Excellence?
Yes, I know, and there's lots of mice groups,
Right.
there's so
Yes.
many, I know.
Yeah. So this one focuses on a lot on incentive group travel, and they
Yes.
always want wellness programs within their meeting and event space. But the president of the chapter was talking about biophilic design, about bringing in nature
Yes.
into spaces because that also does so much for just human experience. And I'm like, wow, this concept. I never thought about it as a design, like how you design your
Yes.
hotel is part of wellness and is going to either help you gain more of those types of customers, which we're seeing a lot of. And I love that you do a complete full analysis and you share those results. Now,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about future, thinking about how you work with people, like what do you see yourself 5 years from now, and how do you see the evolution of your organization?
Yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
question. So again, like when I first started this company, like a year ago.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm going to work with these boutique hoteliers and I'm, going to help them again define where's their challenges, how can they drive revenue. My background is sales. So I'm always about how do we make more money as an industry, right? Like, how does this independent hotel make more money? How do we add commercial strategy? So, yes, the wellness space is a passion for me, but at the end of the day, we need to make money, right? I'm not going to just tell somebody spend $3 million on a spa. There's no reason, like without any
Yeah.
research or
Right.
reasoning. There's doesn't make sense. When I see the evolution of this business, it's been really eye opening to me to really discover the entire retreat space, as I touched on. So, you just mentioned we were talking about MICE groups, incentive groups,
Yeah.
everyone traveling, whether it is, again, like folks, when they thought about retreats in the past, it was this yoga leader or whatever. Corporate groups now want something different. If I'm bringing a corporation somewhere, my the people who work for that corporation don't wanna sit in a meeting room for 4 days
Right.
straight. They
Right.
don't. They want to have an experience, A, so very
Yeah.
experiential,
Yeah.
and B, if there's some way to incorporate wellness, whether that's a wellness break or being out in the nature or doing a bonding experience, going whitewater rafting or doing something together as a team that is a bonding experience as
Mhm.
opposed to, well, we're gonna try to bond in this, four-corner office, and you're gonna sit at a circle table, like, nobody really wants that anymore. Everyone wants, like, "Hey, I have to go travel with my company for 3 days." And then they come back and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had this incredible experience
Yeah.
where we went outside and we trekked and we went on a
Yeah.
hanging bridge and we were in Costa Rica." That's what people are like, "Wow, that was so worth spending the 3 days with my company, away from my family." Even incentive travel. I
Sure.
think once upon a time, people were like, "Wow, like, this is so cool. I was the top salesperson. I get to go on this incentive travel with my company." I'm a mom of 2 kids. If someone told me right now, "Emily, you won this incentive travel. You get to go sit with your company in Mexico in this stuffy hotel," I'd be like, "Do I have to? Like, I don't want the incentive," right?
Right.
So
Yes.
I the entire industry is thinking about how do we evolve these incentives, these meetings, these
Yeah.
corporate events, and I think that's where we have a lot to learn from the retreat space. And so I think as my business evolves over the next 5 years, I think there is going to be so much more of an emphasis on the facilitators who
Mm.
provide this value. And again, as I think of myself as a collective, this isn't going to all be Emily. Yes,
Right.
I may have the background to do the audits, but I'm not going to go teach yoga over here and holistic
Yeah.
healing
Yeah.
over
You're
here.
right.
And
So
stuff.
right.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to tap into the facilitators who are experts in this space and leverage them so that when there is a corporate group or when there is it could be a holistic retreat, we
Yeah.
can tap into these experts and say, "Hey, I know a place or retreat, an incentive group that really needs someone like you to lead them because they can't just have their CEO get up on stage and talk to them for 4 days straight."
It's so true. Now, thinking about those partners, so maybe someone else is listening who's a facilitator or someone in the wellness space who's maybe goes to school or does a lot of research.
Yes.
How what's the best way for them to get in touch with you if they wanted to work with you and collaborate?
Yeah, I would tell them to email me.
Yeah.
Find me
Yeah.
on my website, email
Yeah.
me. I have a lovely Instagram, and I've been writing about all this stuff on
Yes.
Substack, as you know.
Yes.
But I'm especially interested in working with more facilitators because now that I've been working with the venues themselves over the past several months, I see this disconnect in the venues that are beautifully done and the missing of the facilitators who could really come in and provide the value. I
Yeah.
see all too often right now, it's a very weird marketplace for both hotels and retreat centers that have sort of soft weeks, shoulder weeks, and they just sort of sit empty or sit half empty during those weeks. Meanwhile, there are facilitators out there who are looking to partner with venues or hotels and can bring in sometimes a huge following or bring in
Yeah.
experiential
So
programming.
true.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden now you take an empty week and you've brought in this activation that wouldn't have existed. And guess what? Now we're driving revenue for the hotel. We're driving revenue for the retreat center that otherwise would have been empty. So as I'm going through my own evolution, I think that this space is going to continue to grow. And that is kind of the key to the success is that we need to make it very easy for facilitators and venues to work together so that they're both successful.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about too. You mentioned how the guests didn't really know what the offerings were at the hotel level, so the hotel's not doing a great job at communicating this to their customers and the guests that are staying. What are some tips that you would recommend, whether it be a mindset shift from,
Yeah.
for owners or hoteliers, but what are some things you would recommend that they can do today? They can start implementing today, as far as making sure that they're um, advocating for their own space so that way they can
Yes.
get to use it.
I I know we're all bombarded with way
Yeah.
too much technology at this
Oh,
point, so I try to be, I try to be mindful that hotels right now are juggling a lot. The GM is wearing 10 hats in some of these hotels. So I understand it's a lot. So for me, this is how I'm trying to leverage technology myself is to automate some things. And I'm not saying don't be in touch with your guests. Of course you should.
yeah.
But if you're going to have this, experiential programming, you've got to make sure it's communicated. Otherwise, again, why have it? And that starts pre-arrival. I think for too long as an industry, we're like, "Oh, that first impression is so important. When the guest steps in the front door, it's so important." We live in a world now that the second they press book, the second that you've converted them and they're going to be your guest, that's actually their first impression. The first impression is the website. The first impression is online. It's not with you, it's online. And so the moment that they book, you've gotta capture their attention and make sure it's almost immediate, like, "Thank you so much for booking us. While you're here, we noticed you're gonna be here on XYZ weekend. We actually have this incredible artist on residency that weekend. Would you like to participate in that?" And if they're not capturing that moment, that's the moment where the guest has just booked and they're thinking about it. Now they're on to something else. They're doing something else. Now they're with their children. They're somewhere else. They have to capture that right at the booking and then ahead of arrival. So that first impression is no longer the moment that they walk through the front door. It's ahead of them even arriving. And so to your question, instead of expecting our front desk, who's oftentimes also very busy, instead of being like, well, they have to explain everything and they should tell them everything. Well, sometimes that front desk has four people in front of them and a phone call and someone who
Yeah.
has a problem in their room. And no, like we can't expect that front desk person to do everything. So
Uh,
we need to make sure that when that guest walks through the front door, they already know. Hey, well, I'm here this weekend. There's an artist on residency. They're having this special collaboration for dinner tonight with an herbalist. They should know those things already before they walk through the front door. Now, of course, it'd be great for your front desk to be like, "Hey, did you hear about this or XYZ?" And of course, we all want that to happen, but we can't just rely on expecting, this all to be on one person's shoulders. We have to make sure we're doing a good job of telling the whole story.
I agree, and I love what you said, and honestly, my mind is, like, working, and in my mind, I'm like, "Okay, if I was a travel influencer, trying to partner with hotels," to your point, when you set up an automation, how cool would it be is, you airlines as an example, they send you a notification 24 hours that you had to
Yep.
check into your flight, you know this. If hotels
Yes.
sent 24-hour notification as a reminder, they could even put influencer partner sites of an experience that an influencer had at your hotel. They can say, "We also offer this," and do a short form video. I mean, that could
Yes.
happen where now you're like, "Oh, I'm traveling tomorrow. Wait, what hotel am I staying at again? Let
Yes.
me look it up." And then
Yeah,
there's a
where am I going? Where is it? How do I get there?
what's
Yes.
nearby, like, I'm gonna be flying in at this time, I'm hungry, like,
I'm
okay, what
hungry.
yeah. So I think that you're right. There's so much opportunity there for people. So I think hoteliers out there, if they're listening, it's the marketing piece that all
Yes.
they have to do, if they can, is automate, work with their brand leaders, or if they're independent, find out ways that they can just automate a marketing message before arrival, but to not feature dump, but to actually walk
Right.
someone through those experiences.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
again, it shouldn't be a feature dump.
Yes.
Ideally, you're even figuring out, like, who is this persona who's coming? They've
Yes.
come 6 times before. "Thank you
Yes.
so much for coming back again. We know you typically order this and you're coming in late. We have it ready for you." Like, simple things that are, like, above and beyond. It's not complicated, yet we make it so complicated. And again, I think a lot of hospitality is afraid of things like this because 'cause they're like, "Oh, it's gonna lose the human touch." But that's not what it is. I'll tell you, actually, I'll give them a shout out. I stayed at, the Prospect in the Berkshires this summer.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, it was in the fall, but what I enjoyed about it is they text you ahead of arrival, "Hey, your room is ready. When you get here, just give us a text. We'll come get you on the golf cart," and they did. They have a front desk. I didn't need to touch it. But the point was, later that day when I wanted to go to the front desk and just ask some questions and get to know the property, there was someone there, but because so much was handled so seamlessly, we were able to just stand around and have like a 5-10 minute conversation about the area. So to me, it's almost adding back the human element
Yes.
because I was able to have this genuine conversation as opposed to being like, "Oh, I gotta go wait for my key," and, "Up, there's
Yeah.
somebody else in front of me," and, "Is there gonna be somebody?" The friction was just removed. It was just
That's
seamless.
so amazing, and I'm hoping we're like, I believe we're gonna see more and more of that, and I'm also hoping for it because to your point, when you're inundating your front desk with the long lines, all the I remember working and answering the phone calls and having a long
Yes,
line,
I
not
was
getting
there.
yeah, I know, I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh," and how could you possibly give yourself someone attention and that level of service that they deserve? Because they're traveling, they're leaving their families, their business travel, and I just feel that, yeah, it's nice to see that people are implementing that, because 'cause I've traveled to a couple hotels where I'm like, "This is very impressive," like,
yes.
very impressive,
It
so
feels seamless, it feels better,
yeah,
and, I think about this too. I only spent When I left college, I worked at the Breakers in Palm Beach for a year. I was a front office manager, and I only lasted in operations for a year. And I tell people this all the time. The reason why is because it felt so transactional. It felt
yes,
like I that's why I moved into sales because I was like, I want to get to know people and build relationships and take care of them.
yeah.
Um, and it felt like at front desk, it was super transactional. And sadly, feel like for most front desks, that's still the situation.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I like the full circle moment of the wellness piece when you were talking about mental health and thinking about travel. It's such a high stress for so many people. I'll like my mom probably won't be happy that I say this, but she does not like to travel. She turns into like this nervous traveler
Yes.
and I just feel so bad for those travelers who are really anxious and nervous and they show up and then everything is just not they're not getting the attention, they don't know where to go,
Yes.
they don't know who to talk to, so, that even alone, if you have a process, automation, a system, a strategy in place, you can help people with mental health, help them with their anxiety, help them ease their
Yes.
travel, and then you might earn another traveler in the future because they're if they had a great experience, they might come back.
They're gonna come back and tell others about it as that's and then
Yes,
again, those are also basics. It's always been a basic, like, you
yes.
want your guests to enjoy it so much that they come back and tell others. That's
Yes,
it.
yes. Oh my gosh, this was so great, Emily. I could feel like I could talk to you forever.
I
I
know.
do want to give you the final word when we're thinking about you and Elevate Hospitality Collective. What is something you want to leave the listeners with? What's one final word or anything? It could be about your company
Yeah.
or whatever you feel. Yeah.
I think people get I think people in our industry get worried about this because right now, and I just worked for a development company before this. Margins are tight in hospitality right now. So the idea of, paying more or onboarding a new program, people are like, we don't have the money for that right now. But I'll say a couple things. One is it's the old adage, you have to spend money to make money. And
Hmm.
two, there are so much that can be done at a very low cost that will really drive ROI in this space. I think a lot of what can be done, especially with mental health and wellness and hospitality, doesn't cost much. These are simple things. A lot of what we just talked about are simple things that move the needle. And that's really what I focus on at Elevate Hospitality. I'm not typically talking to owners and saying, well, we need to add a $4 million XYZ. We're looking at what can be done today,
Yes.
really turnkey, low cost, effective solutions that are going to drive revenue for your property and, improve guest experience. That's really what this is about. This isn't about you know, adding some sort of tool. Again, like, I'm nerdy about this stuff. I love the cryotherapy and everything else. Okay, love it. But that's not what the principles here are really about. They're really about what can you effectively implement with your current status that's going to move the needle.
Yes, and I love that because it's you probably most hotels probably have something in place, they just have not looked at it in that through that lens, and you're coming on here to help support that, so that is incredible. I truly appreciate your time and for being here.
Feels that.
Um, for the listeners out there, I will drop Emily's contact information in the notes section, and you'll find her on Instagram. I'll be sure to share her handles, but again, it's Elevate Hospitality Collective. And again,
Yes.
Emily, thanks so much. I truly appreciate you, and I'm excited to watch you on your journey.
Well, thanks, Lizette. You as well. And I apologize to everyone about my scratchy voice. It's the Northeast allergy season here. So, as if I didn't have a deep enough voice in the first place, this is the Emily you have today. But
Oh,
I so appreciate you having me and hosting me. I'm so excited about what's happening in this
yeah.
space and excited to see what comes.
Yes, it's so wonderful. All right, well, we'll talk to you later. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, wasn't that so good? I told you Emily is the real deal. And what I keep coming back to is this: so many hotels already have something to work with. They just haven't looked at it through the right lens yet. And that's exactly what Emily helps with. If you want to connect with Emily, I'll drop all her links in the show notes. Her website is Elevate Hospitality Collective, and she's also on Instagram and Substack. Go give her a follow. She puts out really great content. And if you're a hotelier who's been thinking about wellness, reach out to her seriously. And as always, thank you so much for being here and for listening all the way to the end. It means everything to me. You can find us here on Spotify, on YouTube, and of course at hotelindustrytalk.com. Until next time, take care of yourselves, everyone, and talk to you soon. Bye.